We know about America. You only get something if the billionaires want it. This is why America is getting another season of the Rings of Power that no one asked for except for Jeff Bezos. In China, by contrast, the state directs money towards strategic sectors in advance of demand, accepting not every project will succeed, but ensuring the capacity is in place when it's needed. Many people say the great American dream is go to the United States, become rich, and then you can have a good life. Whereas in China, being rich is never a prerequisite for a decent life. Hello everybody! Welcome to the Jingjing Show. I'm Li Jingjing. Infrastructure. Everything that Jackie Chan jumps into or falls from. What can I say? Chinese people are just very good at this. I mean, building infrastructure, not jumping off of it. That's just Jackie. But we are going to talk about infrastructure today because infrastructure has sort of become the new panda of China. Some people come all the way just to see them. So here are some infrastructure high profilers in the past 10 years. I don't want to brag, but if the infrastructure game had a World Cup, then it will look like a ping pong game, where it's just the Chinese playing against Chinese against Chinese. There are some other countries playing along the way, sometimes including America. When they are playing well, you suddenly realize they are also Chinese. As Chinese citizens, we tend to almost take things for granted because these infrastructure wonders are just part of our daily life. But when American tourists come to China, they can't help but ask this question.
So guys, I have a question for all of you guys. What are we paying taxes for in the United States? This is China at 8:30 at night in the park. They have a full-on inflatable water park up there, a ton of vehicles the kids can drive around. Look at how many people are out.
It's not a surprise that the US tourists felt this way because the United States is in somewhat of an infrastructure crisis. One of the most infamous cases, the California high-speed rail. The project was authorized in 2008, which was meant to connect Los Angeles and San Francisco, significantly reducing the travel time between these two cities. After 17 years and over $100 billion, it has finally reached the state where there's no definite deadline to finish this rail. $100 billion. That's the amount of money you can use to buy 100 more America's first black president. Not to rub salt on your wound, I made a simple map to show the differences in China between 2008 and 2020. Just a disclaimer, this is how many high-speed rails China has built in 12 years, not how many scratch marks my cat has left. And speaking about rails, it seems like the US really like to take their sweet time on building new lines, like the 2nd Avenue subway in New York. Contrary to popular belief, the US apparently is very good at long-term planning. They decided to build this line in 1919. One line, 3 stops, almost 100 years. Gotham City has gone through 8 Batman during that time, and none of them got to blow up that part of NTA. And for things that the US managed to finish building, they can't keep them well.
According to the government, there's 70,000 bridges that have been deemed structurally deficient.
Yep.
What does that mean?
It means that they're bridges that need to be really either replaced or repaired in a very dramatic way.
They're dangerous.
I don't want to say they're unsafe, but they're dangerous.
It's a 1927 dam, so at any time we could have a catastrophic failure, which is going to cost more money. It's a budget nightmare, I'm sure. We're kind of falling apart, but...
A country with a relatively short history, America's infrastructure has severe aging issues, and there's very little replacing or upgrading being done. Severe aging issues, very little replacing or upgrading. That's not infrastructure. That's my grandmother's hips. And just like my grandmother's hips, if anything goes wrong, the consequence would be very expensive. Let me give you an example. poor road conditions have been bleeding the American society, leading to extensive delays. The national cost of sitting in traffic exceeds $166 billion each year due to lost productivity, time, and fuel. Imagine if the US could save that $166 billion and spend it not to build another California high-speed rail. The reason why we have to address infrastructure issues is not just because of money. They are literally about life and death. One tragedy that's still fresh is the 2021 Texas power crisis. The entire state of Texas lost power in extreme snowstorms. Over 4.5 million homes and businesses had to survive the extreme weathers with severe shortage of electricity, heat, and food, some for several days on end. More than 700 people were killed as a result of the crisis, according to some estimates. And if that's too heavy, well, let's switch to something that's also life and death: public bathrooms. Look, I live in Beijing, where there are many clean public bathrooms almost everywhere. But when I go to the New York City, I was forced to pay $10 for a coffee just to take an emergency leak in a coffee shop. $10. It's too much and too little at the same time for my dignity. It's such a common problem in New York that someone created a digital map for toilets just so you can have affordable releases. Don't get me wrong, I'm not targeting the US for infrastructure issues. It's allies too. The UK's high-speed rail project has faced significant delays and is coming in an estimated budget of over £100 billion, which has been labeled by the media an appalling mess, which I'm pretty sure is the nickname my cat has given. And in April this year, the Iberian Peninsula had a major power blackout, affecting Portugal and Spain, causing severe difficulties in telecommunication, transportation system, and making their dinner gazpacho. So why can't you have better infrastructure like China does? The answer is quite simple. Socialism! Since we're on the topic of electricity, let's dive into it. According to this Fortune article, in the US, large-scale infrastructure projects depend heavily on private investment. But most investors expect a return within 3 to 5 years. Far too short for power projects that can take a decade to build and pay off. In China, by contrast, the state directs money towards strategic sectors in advance of demand, accepting not every project will succeed, but ensuring the capacity is in place when it's needed. Without public financing to de-risk long-term bets, the US political and economic system is simply not set up to build the grid of the future. Building infrastructure is like having a kid. When you become a parent, you take care of the kid, you feed the kid. Sometimes you have to suffer for the kid. Sometimes you can't just go on an impromptu eat, pray, love trip to Italy with your friends because of the kid. But if you do see it through, the kid will become a valuable member of the family and to society. And instead, investors in the US are just like, hey, you're already 2 months old. Where are my dividends? The sad thing is, in the United States, even if you got the funding, you will most likely still run into problems like poor initial planning, land acquisition issues, regulatory process, environmental litigation, labor shortages, environmental hurdles, material procurement issues, skilled labor shortage, high labor cost agreements, interjurisdiction coordination issues, political dysfunction, and design change. Oh, that was really hard. That's why you will run into problems like this.
Under Joe Biden, they passed $42 billion for rural broadband. It passed in, I think, 2021, early 2022. By the end of 2024, you know how many people were hooked up to rural broadband? A couple dozen.
A couple dozen? That should only be used in a sentence like, I like to take a couple dozen of naps every day, or I have accidentally adopted a couple dozen of kittens. Not on a $42 billion rural broadband project. Look, we know these problems are not unique to the United States. Every big infrastructure project has to consider the cost, environmental impact, procurement, and logistic issues. So how is China overcoming these hurdles and getting so much ahead of the infrastructure game? Well, that could easily be a 10-hour video essay to explain China's advantages of having centralized government control, distinct land ownership laws, targeted financing, and a vast scale of construction industry. So we are not gonna go into it. But there's one thing that people don't really talk about, is where infrastructure comes from. Concrete, yes, we all know that. But I'm talking about the intention behind building infrastructure. I will give you an example. The internet sensation Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge in Guizhou province. We didn't build the world's tallest bridge just so you can have the best bungee jumping experience. That's just a freebie we're throwing in there. The bridge serves as an artery to local economic development, cutting commute time from both sides of the river from 2 hours to 2 minutes. That supercharges trade, tourism, and development of the area. That's why there are over 30,000 bridges in Guizhou province, which was historically isolated from trade routes and major economic centers because of its tricky mountainous terrains. The people in Guizhou province needed these roads and bridges to have a better life. And that's why China has been steadfast in planning and building infrastructure. The 5.5 million kilometers highway system, 48,000 kilometer high-speed rail network, the over $70 billion south to north water diversion project that transfers water from the floody south to the dry industrialized north, the 20,000 kilometer long west-east gas pipeline that fixes energy shortages of the cities in the east and boosts economic growth in the western region, and together with other mega infrastructure projects that rebalance China's energy structure. And not all of these projects are profitable. For example, the Beijing railway system would be in great deficit without immense government subsidies. And even then, they haven't raised ticket price for over 10 years. This is because in China, infrastructure is an essential part of people's livelihood and public well-being, not a speculation opportunity for billionaires to make more profit. We know about America. You only get something if the billionaires want it. This is why America is getting another season of the Rings of Power that no one asked for except for Jeff Bezos. But when you need your health insurance, I'm sorry, the US government can't come to the phone right now. Oh, why? Because it's planning the next shutdown. At the end of the day, what China wants is to alleviate social problems and have common prosperity for its people. Many people say the great American dream is go to the United States, become rich, and then you can have a good life. Whereas in China, being rich is never a prerequisite for a decent life. A decent life should never be a privilege. It should be a government's ultimate responsibility. But if that's not the case, what is your government doing? And who is it really for? Well, thank you for watching the Jingjing Show. See you next time.